Okay, good morning, guys. It is 9:38 on a Sunday. Today is October 14th, 2018, and I tried to do this video on yesterday, but I guess certain things just didn't work out. So I'm new to this YouTube thing and the recording thing and trying to make stuff look right and be behind the certain good things. Hold on. Okay, there we go. So I was trying to come to you guys yesterday to pretty much share my story. Not that everybody has to know my story, or not that it has to be put out there, but it's just something that I kind of want to throw out there that's near and dear to me that may help someone else. Well, I'll go ahead and start with it. I expected more people, I guess, to be there for me. But I mean, certain people may not know your situation and your story, or may not know how severe it is. Not trying to use that as an excuse for anyone, but you know, people can't read minds. So it does come a point in time when you have to talk to them, or at least you should confront them. But with this situation, I don't think it's anything that I should have to confront or talk to about, because just of how I wouldn't say repetitive it is, but just how much it repeated itself in my life to me when I went and told someone. So about 5 months ago, May 11th to be exact, May 11th, 2018, my biological father passed away. And I'm trying to look more into the camera, but he passed away in May. And just to start off with the story in the very beginning, when I was, I guess, so many months old, of course, he came to visit me at the home where I was living at the time with my mom and my grandparents. And I'm not completely sure what happened from then, just because there's two sides to every story, and I don't believe one side more than I believe the other. It's just one thing that I want to put in the past and just kind of like get over this hump. So I know that maybe 13 or 14 years ago, my mom got married to my stepdad, which I don't consider him as my stepdad just because he's been there pretty much the majority of my life and has been the father figure that I needed. Also adding to that, having my biological father not being there also left a void in me that I always felt that needed to be filled. And regardless of, just from my experience, regardless of how much, you know, someone does for you, sometimes that won't fill the void of missing your own biological father there, and or missing your own biological parent. And nobody's going to really understand that, not unless they've been, I guess, in my shoes and didn't have their parent growing up but long for them to be there. So my mom got married and we ended up moving to where my father lived, my stepdad lived. We ended up moving there, and I remember multiple times like calling my grandmother, just saying, you know, like, hey, I just want to come back. And I feel like it's only because I wasn't used to being in that particular area. I was so used to being where my grandparents lived. I don't want to speak of that, but I was so used to being where my hometown was that I had never really stayed off. And when I did stay off, I would always, you know, cry and want to come home. So it was just something I had to adjust to with moving. I wasn't that young, but I was I guess young enough to know that it wasn't my home that I was going to, or that I had moved to. So it was a totally different area, and I had to adjust. So I remember from that time, from before I had left my hometown until, I guess, when I could talk at a young age, or when I started talking, I remember talking on the phone with my dad, my biological dad. And I remember saying very little, because I remember he would say certain things on the phone and my mom would have to say yes, like, you know, she would have the input for me, because I remember those. I remember those times though. But I remember us talking on the phone, and once we moved, things just, I guess, changed a bit. I didn't talk to him, and the communication was pretty much like, I wouldn't say cut off, but the communication pretty much stopped. So from the time that, you know, we moved up until when I was around 17 or 18. I remember constantly asking my mom, you know, like, hey, I want to talk and find my biological father. I just want to talk to him. And I feel regardless of if your parent is looking for you or you are looking for your parent, it's still a blessing on either end. I'm not upset that he wasn't out there searching for me, or maybe he actually, let me correct myself. He knew that I was out there. But it was just one of those things where he didn't pursue because he felt as if, oh, well, she's, you know, in another family now, so it's no point in me trying to find her or reach out to her. It wasn't that it wasn't no point. It was just like, okay, she probably doesn't want to talk to me. So we pretty much had the same feelings towards each other. Like, okay, he probably doesn't want to talk to me. It's been this long now, but lo and behold, he did. So once I was 17, I graduated high school and I left for the Army. And I went to basic training, and before that I ended up messaging like everybody with the last name of Shells on Facebook, just trying to see if I could find anybody. And I would say, hey, I copied and pasted the same message, hey, you know, my name is such and such, this is my dad's name, this is what I know about him, he lived in Georgia, he once lived in, you know, Fayetteville, which is where my mom and dad had ended up meeting. And you know, I was just giving them all the information that I knew, and I never got anything back from anyone. But prior to that, I can say one of my aunts, though, I went over to her house and she allowed me to look up some addresses, and she was like, you know, which one do you think he's at? And I was like, I don't know, let's just try this one. So I ended up writing a letter, and we sent the letter, but I never got anything back, and come to find out, he wasn't even there at that address. So fast forward back to after basic training, after I had graduated and I got my phone back, I was just checking my messages, and that's when I guess I never knew of like the requested section in the Facebook Messenger thing where they had I guess where if you're not friends with someone, then I guess they'll request to send you a message and you have to accept it. So I got a message back from, which I now know, my cousin, and she was like, yes, I know him, you know, I just haven't talked to him in a long time because of this, and this, and I can give you grandma's number so you can call her. So I ended up calling her, and we didn't talk very long, but I ended up calling her. She called him and gave him my number, and then he called me. So at the time, I had already went through basic training, half of AIT, and then I came home. So I was working at a drugstore at the time, and I remember just being there in the drugstore, and I was telling the pharmacist at the time, like, my dad is going to call me at any minute. Like, if you don't mind, can I please walk out when he does call, because I want to talk to him. So I remember his number popping up on my phone, and it had like the Georgia, because I have an iPhone. Everybody does nowadays, but it had Georgia at the bottom. And I was like, oh God, I think this is him. So like I answered the phone, and it was. And I remember our very first like talk or conversation, and we just cried and cried and cried on the phone. And he was just telling me that before he had talked to me or found out that I was trying to reach out to him, he didn't feel like he had a purpose for living. And once he knew that it was somebody out there that just like longed for him and wanted to talk to him and cared about him, that's when he felt like he had a purpose. So I'm going to really try not to cry this video. Granted, like I said, it's only been 5 months, so it's still days where, you know, I laugh about our conversations and I cry. But so we talked from there, and I remember he was at work, and we ended up talking like that whole night. And from that day on, we pretty much talked every single day. And I can say that we are the same. I wouldn't say we are the same people, but I get a lot of my traits from him, because my attitude, my smart mouth, I wouldn't say I have anger problems, because I don't, but like my temper, my quick temper, like I get all of that from him. And it was certain times where we would be on the phone, and it was like I was biting back with myself. Like we would just be going at it sometimes, and then it was other times, more than others, that we would just laugh and we would cry on the phone. And I remember him crying multiple times, just saying he just didn't understand. And I never really got into that too much, but he would just say how he just didn't understand, and how he missed, you know, graduations and da-da-da. And granted, he could have been there, or granted, some other things could have been done, but the situation is the way it was. And that's just something I didn't want to get into the past. I wanted us to move forward with our relationship and just grow stronger and move from there. So after that, of course, like 2-3 years went by, and due to his situation and his circumstance, he wasn't able to come and see me. He couldn't, I wouldn't say he couldn't drive, but due to his situation, he didn't have his license at the time, so he wanted to take the chance, but did not take the chance to drive to see me, just because I was like, okay, if you drive and get stopped, I don't want you to get in trouble, then be in jail, then I'm trying to find out what's going on. So due to his situation, he did not drive, or couldn't drive, I guess, per se, to come and see me, but it was multiple times I could have gone to see him, but we were just waiting for the right moment. I know we were supposed to meet this year face to face. Well, if you guys didn't catch, I've never met my dad face to face with him being alive. So we have FaceTime multiple times, and I remember I was on vacation earlier in May. No, actually, it was in March. I'm sorry. I was on vacation in March, and I remember him. We were on the phone, and I was FaceTiming him. I was showing him, like, the view outside, and Evan, my boyfriend, he was, like, standing behind me, and my dad was just saying, wow, that's so pretty, baby girl, and be careful, and he was about to go into work, and I remember, I just remember us talking and just being, like, so happy on the phone. So I was excited when we had first gotten in contact, because I was telling my grandmother, I was telling my grandma in my hometown, I was telling my grandparents, and I was just so excited. I was like, you guys know that I've been trying to get up with him for a long time, and we're finally talking every day. And I would tell one of my aunts that used to take me to school in the mornings with my other cousin, I would tell her all the time, as soon as I find my dad, I'm going to move away and I'm never coming back. And I will always say that to her, just because it was crazy that I love somebody so much and I care for somebody so much that I had never met in person. It was just a part of me. Like, that was my dad, you know. It was just something that was a part of me. And I never really got the feeling to see how it was to just have my biological father just being around, and us being able to go out and do things and go out and play and go to the movies, and him see all my graduations. And I remember telling him that I was going to nursing school, and I was like, you know, I'm going to nursing school, and then this is my plans after this, da da da. And he was like, well, every graduation from here on out, I'm going to be standing in the crowd with a white suit on. That's my baby girl. I'm going to be cheering you on. Like, he was so excited to know that, like, I was so smart and, you know, so educated, and I wasn't allowing certain things to steer me. I was always determined to get things done, and I'm still that way now. If nobody has the patience and time to help me, then I will get it done myself, and I won't ask from there on. So I remember specifically on May 11th, that morning, I remember my cousin that I first got in contact with to talk to see if she knew him. I remember her messaging me or putting something on my Facebook thing, and she was like, hey, you need to call grandma. And I was like, you know, I don't really talk to her, but okay, I'll call her. So instead of me calling her, though, that night, Evan and I had went to the gym, and we had, what did we do? We went to the gym, and we went out to eat, I believe, and then we came back and watched the movie, and then I just popped up out of nowhere, and I was like, I need to call my dad. So he was like, okay. So it was about midnight, so I ended up leaving, because at the time he was still living on base. So I ended up leaving, and like halfway down the road, because when you're leaving from base, you don't really have service. So like halfway down the road, I ended up calling my dad, and I was, you know, the phone just kept ringing, and it's never been a time where he has never answered his phone, at least when I have called. He's always answered it, or if he was busy, he would be like, hey, baby girl, you know, can I call you back because I'm busy right now? So he had, the phone just kept ringing, and so I was like, okay. So then at that time, the girlfriend at the time that he had, she ended up answering the phone. So she was like, hello? And I was like, hello? And I was like, where's my dad? And she was like, where are you at right now? And I said, I'm on my way home. Or she asked me, was I like, what was I, could I stop or something? And I remember saying something like, I'm on my way home. And I ended up pulling over to the gas station. And she was just telling me, like, you know, so I had went to work this morning, and I was just like, you know, where's my dad? She was like, well, I went to work this morning, and she was like, your dad came in pretty late last night, and he asked if he could sleep in the bed. And I was just thinking to myself, like, why would he have to ask if he could sleep in the bed if that's his place too? But I didn't pay it no attention, so I was like, okay. So she was like, and I told him yes, and I had left food for him in the microwave. So she was like, next thing I know, it was time to get up. And she was like, your dad is normally gone before me. And she was like, he was still asleep in the bed. So I was like, okay. She was like, but he was snoring louder than he's ever snored. So then she said, I kind of like nudged him and said, hey, you know, I'm leaving for work. And she said he was snoring, so she didn't think anything of it, and she just left, which my thoughts were, okay, you know, if he's normally gone before you, he didn't tell you he was off, like, but she then said that she left for work and she was able to come home like on her lunch break, or she got off early or something like that. And that's when she noticed that of course he was still there. So she said she went to the room and she like nudged him. And at the time I was just thinking like, okay, you know, maybe he's just in the hospital, because she didn't say anything about him being gone. She's just pretty much explaining what's going on. And most of the time when people do that, they're saying, okay, you know, so that's why he's in the hospital and he's doing this and on that. So I was like, okay, you know, instead of us, my dad and I had already planned earlier this year, 2018, that we were going to meet for my birthday this year. And that was just something we had already planned, to meet face to face for the very first time. So I was like, okay, you know, instead of me going for my birthday, I'm going to go now. I'm just going to go ahead and have to take off from work, because I had just started my job in January. So I didn't really have too much time. And I think May was when I actually, March, April, May, February, March, April. I think April or May is when I had just hit like my 90 days. So that way I could pretty much like have my time off and have paid time off. So I remember her just saying, you know, I walked in and I went to the room and his feet were cold and his body and stuff was cold. And she was just saying how she was trying to nudge him to wake him up and he didn't. So she went to the neighbor's house and got the neighbor, and that's I guess when they called 911 and had the deputy come out there and pretty much pronounce him dead. So I remember when I was just sitting in the car and I was like, no, no, no. I was like, no, that didn't happen. And I just kept trying to say no, no, like, you know, just hoping that that stuff wasn't real, because for so long I had tried to get in contact with my dad, and right before we could meet, he was gone. So I pulled over while I was at the gas station, and I remember just screaming and screaming. And I remember some people just coming over to the car trying to figure out what was going on, and I couldn't get it out. And I remember his girlfriend just like trying to pray on the phone with me, because I really felt like I was losing my mind. And it just hurt me that he was gone and we had gotten so close. We had just gotten so close, and I just knew that that wasn't real. So I finally got off the phone with her and I called my mom, and I still couldn't get it together when I was on the phone with her. So I finally got home, and I just kept saying no, no, like I don't understand, and I just wanted to keep calling his phone and hoping that he would answer. But his girlfriend just answered. She stayed on the phone with me for a very long time. And I remember that next morning, I had ended up calling the deputy or the coroner or the lady, like the people that find him dead. And I called her, and she was just, you know, telling me what was going on. And she was like, I went by your grandmother's house and she told me that your dad had a daughter. So she was like, you're pretty much next of kin and you have to take care of, you know, everything. And I just want to make sure it's okay that we send his body off to Atlanta, Georgia to get the autopsy done. So I was just like baffled for one, because I'm only 21 years old and I'm about to have to plan a funeral for my dad. For two, it could not be real. Like, we had never met in person, and like, I believe in God, and I grew up in a Christian home and I grew up in church. And at that time, I like, honestly, I was questioning my faith. Like, God, how could you do something like this? Like, you know, it really, at first I was just so confused, and I was like, God, why would you take someone away from me that I have been trying to get in contact with for so long? Like, I was just so confused, and I just didn't understand. So we ended up, I ended up going to Georgia within the next, I think 4 days after they said that his body had came back, when I could go ahead and proceed to planning the funeral. Granted, at that time, I was only 21. I'm 22 now. That was in May, and I turned 22 in August, but I was only 21, having to plan a funeral and not knowing what in the world I was doing. So I know at first my grandmother, the way they do things per se, they're just used to, I guess, cremating and having a memorial service and moving past. But I know my dad's religious preference, and I know that that's something he wouldn't have wanted. Of course, he would want anything that would be easier on anybody that's taking care of it, but I know that's not something he wanted, so that's not what I did. So of course it was I wouldn't say confrontation, but it was just a lot of disagreement between myself and my grandmother, and I guess my dad's side of the family on his mom's side. And ended up having his service on May 19th. So it was about a week and 2 days later, and I had it at the funeral home, C.A. Reed Funeral Home, and I would recommend anybody that's in Georgia to go to him, just because he works with you. He's very understanding. He takes his time. It's not something he rushes, and it's not something that he tries to force on you to get or to buy extra stuff. So I remember going there, and I remember his girlfriend, she gave me a whole lot of information, and I really do want to thank her, because she did help me due to the way things are now. We do not communicate, but I am not that type of person to sit there and bicker and go off at someone. So I forgive her for anything that has been said or done, and I still love her, just because I'm not that type of person. I'm in a totally different space now. So getting back to the funeral, I ended up going to Georgia, and I had to literally plan everything. Didn't know what I was doing at all. I much rather was expecting to plan events for us to do than to be planning a funeral. So I got there, and Mr. Reed was helping. You know, he was just very understanding. My mom's parents came with me, as well as my friend Dejani. She came with me as well. And I remember the drive up there, people were just calling me, and I would just break down, because it was just unbelievable that somebody was calling me, giving their condolences on behalf of my dad passing. And I was actually going up there not to meet him for the first time, but to lay him to rest. So I got up there, and I remember, like, fast forward to, you know, the days that we were there up into the service. And I remember my dad's girlfriend and I, we were trying to plan colors. And my dad and I always used to talk on the phone, saying how, you know, he was going to get his own spot, and he was asking me what color did I want the bathroom and my bedroom. And I was like, purple, because that's my favorite color. And he would just make all these plans for the both of us. So we ended up wearing like purple/lavender. And I remember going to look for my dress and look for my shoes, and I had found them. And I remember 2 days prior, I had went by where my dad lived, and I remember going in his apartment complex, and him and his girlfriend, they had like a table with her kid's picture and then mine, and my picture. And I remember seeing my picture, and I remember her mom just hugging me, and she was like, "I see him in you." And that's all she kept saying. And then that's when my dad's girlfriend came out, and we hugged and cried. And then she was like, "Well, if you want to go down the hallway, that's where I found your dad at." So I went down the hallway, and I went in the room, and I just rubbed his pillow, and I rubbed his side, and then I went in his closet and rubbed his clothes. I, like, you know, touched all of his shoes. I was able to take his favorite, his two of his shirts that he always wore. One of them, which is the blue and white checkerboard shirt, and I took a pair of his sunglasses, and you know, I just took certain things that I would be able to make out of something one day to remember him. So I remember her picking out the suit, and she had the suit and everything laid out on the bed, and we had to put a hat on him because I guess the way they do the autopsy, they have to cut a certain way. So I remember us picking out the hat, and after I guess 2 days, on that Friday, I was finally able to go and view him. And I didn't want it published in the newspaper. I just wanted to have something for him that he would like get it over with and just try to move on. So I remember Mr. Reed, him calling me on that Friday, and he was like, "Okay, you know, you're able to come and view him around this time." So I was like, okay. So I remember walking in the funeral home with my grandfather, and we walked into that door, and I remember seeing his body in the casket, and I was like, there's no way I'm meeting him for the first time and he's not able to like interact with me back. So I went up to him and I just like held his hand. And it was weird because his hand was still warm, like right in this area. So I just held his hand. And I remember just rubbing his chest. And I touched his face. I touched his ears. I just kept touching him because it was just unbelievable that I was meeting him for the first time. But he was in his casket and he was dead. So I remember just screaming in there. And my granddaddy was just like, let it out, let it out. So I just kept screaming because it was so unbelievable to me for me to meet him like that. Like, it was just so unbelievable for me to see him like that. So I remember just sitting on the bench and just staring. I couldn't believe it, and to be honest with you, I felt like I had just like I just didn't know myself. And I was like, this isn't me, this isn't my life. Everything that I've like been through and how I was treated in the past up until now, like I was like, there's no way that this is happening. So I remember that Saturday morning we got up, and I made sure that I got up pretty early because I did not want to be late at all. And I made sure we got up, I got up pretty early, everybody got up early. And I remember putting on my dress and getting my hair ready, and I didn't put on any makeup, and I just got my shoes on, and I was like, wow, my dad would be, you know, so proud. So prior to that, I know that I had to go to the VA office, I had to go to the courthouse, I had to do so much stuff that I didn't even know what I was doing. Like, as soon as I got in the car, it was just like God was speaking to me, telling me what to do next. Like, I had no idea what I was doing at all. Planning a funeral, like taking care of all of the paperwork to make sure that they knew what was going on, or the people knew behind the paperwork what was going on. Like, I had no idea what I was doing. So, but I remember that Saturday morning getting ready, and none of his family members showed up. His brothers weren't able to make it due to how far they lived away. In their like financial situation with paying for a plane ticket, and then hotels, and then food and gas and stuff when they were there, then having to fly back, taking off time from work, not being able to get paid. So I completely understood. But I was able to meet one of my cousins that I talk to every day now. I don't want to say his full name, but Maine. I talk to him all the time, and he actually my dad cut his hair several times, and you know, he had a relationship with his uncle. So I remember walking into the funeral, and it wasn't many people there at all. Just a few people that he knew and that knew him around the community, and his stepmom was there, as well as I think her husband and my cousin, my little cousins, the grandkids. And I remember walking in, his mom wasn't there, his sister did not show up, and nobody really from his family was really there, like his immediate family. So I remember my dad's girlfriend at the time, she had her choir come and sing from the church that she attended, as well as she had her pastor that was there. He came to pretty much do like the eulogy or give like words of encouragement. And I remember at the time, you know, people went up one by one to go and say things, and his best friend went up there, and then that's when his girlfriend went up there, and I was last to go up there. And it was crazy how when I was up there, everybody was so shocked to hear me say, like, if you are my family, please come up to me because I don't know you. And not only did that hurt me, but I think that hurt a lot of people as well, because all of them, like every single one of them, came up to me afterwards and was just hugging me, and I'm here, you know, here's my number, give me a call. I knew your dad this way, he talked about you. And I remember at the viewing on that Friday, one of his, I guess, co-workers or somebody he used to cut hair for, the boy, he was probably about my age, and he was like, I want to let you know that your dad loved you very much, and he talked about you every chance he got. He would always tell me the stuff that he was going to get for you and the things that you guys were going to do. He was like, so I don't want you to go back home thinking that he didn't, because he loved you very much. And everybody that I ran into would always tell me that, especially there at the service. They would just say, you know, your dad loved you, he talked about you all the time, he was so excited to meet you. And it kind of hurt me that my grandmother didn't show up, because, you know, that's her son. I get, due to her religious preference, she didn't agree with the type of service that I was having, but my dad was a Christian, and I wanted to do something according to his belief. And that's something that I can live with, knowing that I know that he's happy with what I did for him. So after that, we went to the burial, which was not far from the funeral home at all. And I just remember the pastor just doing the ashes to ashes or dust to dust thing. And I remember him putting the dirt, and he prayed, and he touched the casket, and then it just got quiet. So I had bought purple flowers before we had got to the service, and I remember just standing up, and I went and put the flowers on the casket, and I touched the casket, and I kissed it, and I just walked away. Everybody else just sat there, but I walked away. And all I remember is my grandfather just coming to get me, because I just fell to the ground. I just couldn't believe that I was leaving my dad. And for some reason, I just felt so comfortable being there with him. And just for me to like have to kiss him and leave him so soon, and not so much leave him, for me to come back and see him and be like, hey dad, but just leaving him, and him being in the ground and just not being able to see him at all. And that hurts me so bad, because I wouldn't wish this pain on anybody. I wouldn't wish the way I feel on anybody. I wouldn't wish what I've gone through on anybody. I wouldn't wish anybody at my age or at any age to have to plan a funeral. And granted, I'm the only child, and he was never married, so it was like everything was on me to do. So after that, we ended up going to his house, and I was able to just take pictures of his stuff, because I was leaving and had to come back to go to court and stuff for him. And in between when I left from his service and when I had to come back and go to court, a lot of things happened in between then. But I just wanted to put my story out there, because a lot of people don't know my situation. And not that anybody has to know my situation, but I just wanted to share it, because it could be some people, or it could be some kids my age, even older or younger, that are going through the same situation, and nobody should ever have to go through that. Granted, it was multiple times that my dad and I could have met, but due to his jobs, my jobs, and certain situations he had going on, we just set a date. And instead of trying to rush it, we just set that date, and we FaceTime, we called, we text, we did everything. So I can honestly say that it's nights that I have a hard time just sleeping, just because I think about him so much, and I really think about the way things could have been. And surprisingly, like I said in the video, I expected I guess more people to just be there for me than what has been. I guess certain people didn't know my situation, but like I said, regardless of the situation, nobody should have to go through this alone. And if you've had your father growing up, there's no way that you can say you know what I'm going through, because yes, you may know what I'm going through as far as like pain wise, and maybe your father passing away with you being older than my age, but having your father there from birth up until is something totally different from not having him there, getting in contact with him, getting close to meeting, and then the way we meet, or the way I meet him, is him being in his casket. So it's a lot of hurt and pain and confusion that I've been dealing with. And I know it's something in the Bible that says, you know, pretty much like, don't be confused. Like, you know, you should not be confused. And I just wish that I had more people behind me. And I don't feel like I should have to run after anyone at all and let them know what I'm going through, or let them know that I'm grieving. Like, you know, but it's just something that I'm beginning to live with, because not everybody is meant to go with you in every season. Or maybe this is just a season in my life where I just need to realize, okay, well, that person's not there, that person's not there, and neither is that person. So don't you go running behind them, because it's not going to do anything but hurt you if you don't get anything back in return. Or if, you know, I just feel grieving, especially over a parent, can be the absolute worst if you don't have your head on straight. And if I didn't know God, I can honestly say things possibly would have been a lot different. But my faith is a lot stronger, and I can say this situation has changed me. It has changed me to be, I wouldn't say more open, but it's changed me to just be myself. My dad was never somebody else or tried to pretend to be somebody else. He was always himself. He always, you know, he loved people. He loved to interact with others. I mean, he cut hair. He was a maintenance man. You know, he was just an all-around man, you know, regardless of his situation, of what was done in the past and what had been said in the past and the mistakes he made in the past. My thing is, if you do not know your parents now, or if you've had a hard relationship with them, like, please, please, please try to forgive them for anything they have ever done. Forgive them for not being there. Forgive them for what happened between, you know, maybe themselves and the other parent. Forgive them for what has been said or what has been done. Forgive them for what they may have thought about you or the other. It's just, I just feel like I'm in a different space. I forgive everyone for what anybody has ever done or said to me, because I remember my dad and I being on the phone, and he was like, you know what? He was like, it's so many things that has been done, you know, that have been done or said about me. And he was like, you know, I just forgive them. He was like, because that's something I cannot continue to live with. He was like, I'm not gonna not get any sleep over it. But he just kept saying, you know, how it did hurt him. So yes, it's going to hurt. There are moments where I literally cry and scream, and there are moments where I'm okay and I can laugh about the conversations that my dad and I had and the memories that we did share. So I do thank God first and foremost for allowing us to have that type of bond, because it's very rare. I know my grandmother, she was pregnant actually with my mother when she found out that her father was passing away. and she wasn't able to go and fly to see him because she was so close to having my mom, and he just ended up passing away. So it's certain situations like that where you just never get a chance to meet your parent, and they ended up passing away, and maybe it doesn't hurt you as bad because you didn't know them like that, you know, or not that you didn't know them, but you didn't, not that you didn't want to get to know them, but you just didn't have the desire that I did to actually meet my father for so many years. So I just wanted to put that out there just to share my story because a lot of people are not aware. I feel that, like I keep saying, a lot of things could have been different, but I am glad for the ones that have been there for me, and I really do appreciate you, and I thank you. I talk to Evan, and I of course talk every single day. It's not something I want to talk about every day, but when I do want to talk about it, he's always there to listen. He's never told me to, you know, stop crying or look at this and look at that, you know. He's never told me that. He's always just sat there and listened. So I really do appreciate him for listening to me. I love him very much. He's my absolute best friend, and I wouldn't want our relationship or anything to be any different. Like, but I do thank you for watching. I hope that it has helped someone. I'm just sharing my story and being honest as to how I feel. So, and that's one thing my dad was. He was honest as to how he felt, and sometimes it hurt some people for him to be as honest as he was and to say what he felt that was on his mind. But that's just who I am. That's who I've always been. Might not have been as profound as it is now, but this is who I am. Like, this is me, and I feel like my dad has pretty much made me want to, like, open myself up more and just be me. Like, stop being, not that I'm fake or anything, but just stop trying to accommodate to others. Like, if you want to live your life a particular way and you want to do things a particular way, then, you know, not trying to say make others accustomed to your ways, but if they don't like it, then there's nothing you can do about that. So I am continuously praying for my attitude. I'm continuously praying over my mouth, because sometimes my mouth can be a bit much. I'm continuously praying over my pettiness. But I just wanted to put my story out there. Please, if any of you have been through anything like that, I would definitely put my email below, because I definitely want to hear your story. I'm going to eventually seek counseling, just because I feel it's best to talk it out. Not that I can't talk it out with the ones that are there for me, but sometimes it kind of is okay to talk it out with a professional, you know, to get their point of view and to see how they can possibly help you out, because I don't want to push this off. I want to be able to move on, but move on at my pace, but move on at a way where I'm not moving on and backing track and then constantly, you know, I just don't like that. But I do love everyone regardless. I'm not cutting my communication or my ties off from anyone, but I am kind of stepping back a bit and just giving myself some time. And you're more than welcome to call, to text me, to email me, to reach out to me, come by and see me. You're more than welcome. But as of right now, I feel good in my element. Like, I'm happy. I'm not happy with the situation, but I'm just pretty much content with my life at the moment. I'm happy with my life, not in the situation yet again, but I'm you know, trying to just move on in a better way, and taking my dad's death as something more serious. So yet again, I thank you for watching. Please reach out to me if you have had the similar situation, or if you just have something to say. Please reach out to me, and thank you again for watching. I apologize for crying, but then again, I'm not apologizing for anything, because that was expected. So I thank you again for watching, and look out for more videos. No, I thank you all again for watching and sitting here. I'm sorry if I made anyone cry, but it's just a touchy situation that I wanted to share, but I was gonna wait longer. Then I was like, you know what, no, this is something that has been on me, so I'm gonna go ahead and share it now. So Thank you again for watching. I love you guys. My handful of subscribers that I do have, because it's not many, but I thank y'all.